of the Planning and Zoning Board of Mexico Beach to order. Roll call, Adrian.
Mr. Copeland, Mr. Bush,
Here.
Mr. Kerrigan,
Here.
Mr. Driver,
Here.
and Ms. Wilkins.
Okay, this is just going to be a short meeting, the first of two that we have to hold on the coastal management element. And we were originally scheduled for the housing element today. That will be postponed for our next meeting. And I would try to, when we're going to set up the next meeting workshop at the end of the day, I would like to include that housing element with that one. So when we finish the conservation element, then we'll go right into the housing element at the next meeting. Does everybody concur with that?
I thought we finished let's see, we did traffic circulation and then housing is the next one.
You've done housing?
No. we
Okay,
need
that's
to
what I'm
do
saying.
housing.
We will do housing at the next meeting.
Yeah, but
In
you mentioned
addition to the second
conservation.
meeting
He meant coastal management.
Coastal management, okay, I'm with you.
on coastal management.
Set.
Okay, first item for discussion, presentation of current comprehensive plan in comparison to statutory requirements of Florida Statute 163.3178, subpara 2, subpara F. Okay, there was a handout that we got in our emails, which was basically a synopsis of that Florida statute, and we really need that to compare what we've got now, because I've got some questions. And I noticed Bill also had some questions
Yeah,
on
just
that
a few
handout that we
minor
need
ones.
clarified before we can address that. So you've got a copy. Can I get your copy now?
Yes, sir.
Jack and I can share this.
Okay.
And why don't you go ahead with what you've got? Well,
Okay.
I'll tell you what we can do. Just start with
Just go number one. And
number one, number two, and just go down each one. Then you cover what you've got. I'll cover what I've got. Laura can address those issues, and then we'll just go right through them and see where we stand.
Can you give us an overview again of what exactly this is and what our objectives are when we're all done with our two meetings?
Yeah, so just to go and give you some background information, what happened was when Mel applied for the technical assistance grant to help finance the updates to the comprehensive plan, DEO came back and said, oh, that's well and good, but we want you to specifically address this new requirement that was adopted by the legislature in 2015, and it's shortly called flood peril. And these are, so this is a new statute. They inserted it a couple years ago, so you won't have any of this addressed in your 2007 plan. So what they decided is they want to, and I'm not for sure, it could have been something that the federal government adopted and is now trickled down to the state level, which is why we have a coastal management element to begin with, because of federal requirements. So what we just need to do is address each of the requirements of Part 2 of 163.3178, which, Part F of Part 2, which are 1 through 6, and make sure that we include those into the updates that we're submitting to the state as part of the whole entire plan update, because now it's a hinge on the grant financing. So this workshop's serving as one of two required that they put into our scope, and we are looking to receive public input on flood perils in the city and where they've noticed it, and if there's some low-lying areas. And we also, at the next meeting, we should have some maps prepared that show kind of where those areas are, with the FEMA flood maps and the coastal high hazard areas and your wetlands.
Now Mel has got some stuff up here on the board here, which is the current flood map. He's high tide? Was it storm surge map?
For sea level rise,
Storm
1
surge.
foot above, up to the 6 foot above, the accompanying colors there, which let you know which one's which.
Mhm.
In other words, the dark red is the 1 foot above for a sea level rise, and the 6 foot is the kind of a yellowish gold color there.
Where is that?
Yeah, I can't see. How is, like, where's Tyndall and where's Toucans and?
Can you zoom in?
Tyndall would be.
So that red is the canal, right?
This
the
is
red
the coral
basically is the
property,
canal.
right?
Oh,
so-
I see, okay.
And this comes down to what? This is at the El Governor right here?
Well, this right here where the little hands waving, that
Uh-huh.
is the 23rd Street Park. That's the moat they call it. So as you go further this.
Parker Park.
Park, okay.
Yeah, Parker Park.
Okay, so that's Parker Park there, all right, so is this the 8th Street Canal? Right here?
Right here.
Okay, so that puts this back in my neck of the woods, and 15th Street is somewhere back in
Yeah,
here.
you're just off the map there.
Okay,
So basically, there's no problem in the areas east of that canal.
Well, until you get to the 6 foot, right? Because that's the yellow
Right.
yeah.
sea level rise.
Yeah, I wasn't able to get all on one page and have it so small where it didn't make any sense, you know?
Because I know where I'm down by 386, we're higher than, just about anywhere else in Mexico Beach, so. Okay, what was the last one you had, Mel? The third?
The last one was a shallow coastal flooding. But the red is what they call susceptible areas. And that kind of, on the west side of the city, kind of follows where the canal is, and of course the coast, and of course the ditching system there on the east side.
Okay.
And then anybody along the 8th Street Canal part.
Yes.
Can we get that included in our handout for the next meeting too, Adrian?
Sure, and I can even do a little better job of maybe getting a picture of the west side and a picture of the east side, but you'd have to understand they're two separate
Yeah.
maps.
Okay.
I tried to dial it down and get it all on one page, but it was so small that I had no idea what I was looking at.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. So we really, the next meeting, we really need some public input then. Based on what they noticed, based on the flood zone map, and then they'd have to been here. What's the last time we had a flood here?
Do you have any repetitive loss structures?
The last ones we had was in 2005, so we've not had any since then.
Okay.
And they go off the map after 10 years, so
Have we got any,
don't have any real.
we don't have anything then historically?
That's 2005, correct.
Okay, so if we can get that, get a copy of that too at the next meeting,
Sure.
and then something too we can post. But I think, public input's gonna be, kind of be critical when we deal with this stuff, if we're gonna do it the way this Florida statute wants it done. Okay, Bill, let's start with 1.
Okay, I just had underlined, I guess it's the 1, 2, 3, third, fourth line from the bottom of number 1, which said, as intended legislator, that local government comprehensive plans restrict development activities where such activities would damage or destroy coastal resources, and blah, 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 blah. So the question there is, what's coastal resources? We still have houses that are being built on the coastline, but I know the state has to, is already in here to tell us where they can and can't be put. So with the state regulations, there's really nothing we need to do here. The state's gonna cover the coastal plans. And then the other subset to that is along the canal, which is listed as a flood zone, or not flood zone, but, at high tide and stuff. There's currently houses being built that are on the ground as opposed to being up in the air. Is that something we as a community need to get involved in, or we're just letting, which kind of makes sense to me, let the state tell us that if it's in the flood zone or not in the flood zone, then there's all sorts of those regulations. It seems like if we try to outguess the state and start our own regulations, it just turns into a he said, she said, whatever.
You can certainly be more restrictive. There's a lot of, I would say most jurisdictions have a flood ordinance. I'm sure you have one. So your ordinance would say, if you're in a AE or some kind of flood zone that has wave attenuation, that you have to be a certain amount of feet or you have to have breakaway walls, or there's all this technical information that you can
Right.
have in there. So I don't know if the homes that you're speaking of are in a flood zone, or we have to kind of look at that to see, and then your building permitting would be the one that would catch
Yeah.
if they need to be on stilts, because maybe they're in a flood zone and they have a 10-foot base flood elevation. So I don't know where you're talking about, but we would look at where those are being constructed in comparison to the flood maps, and then figure out if that's an area that's required to build up on stilts because of the flood.
And I think our permitting process, and then in some of the language we've already looked at, talks about X number of feet above the center of the roadway,
Right,
17 feet
that's pretty
to,
normal.
yeah, so we're covered there. So to me, it's more, I guess, and maybe Mel can help us, where are those areas that require elevated building? And maybe we just need to look at that as a cursory look to say, gee,
Make sure,
let's just make sure that
Yep.
in the future, if anybody builds, now's the time to catch it.
right,
And then there was some language farther down that talked about, maybe it was in the housing, on getting flood insurance discounts based on us doing extra work to comply or work on that, which I think is something we should pursue,
right.
which is just gonna get more and more expensive.
Are you part of the community rating system, is the
We are not at this point.
Why not? So if you participate in that, and that does require some staff time, it's not hugely laborious, but, you know, you at least have to provide annual updates, and you have to do certain things throughout the year to keep your rate lower, and that helps with your city's flood insurance rates.
So how much work is involved in that?
Getting started would probably be the most, because you've got to get a system up. You've got to get, there's certain things you can do, and I haven't looked at it in some time, but 10 or 12 categories of things that you can do, and the more of those categories you do, the lower your insurance rates will be. Some of them are as simple as just putting out information as to whether or not your home is in a flood zone, and some people like to include those on the water bills, which is fine. You can put out newsletters, you can put ads in the newspaper, and there's all kinds of things you can do. Like I said, I used to do it when I was at Bay County, but I haven't done it since then, and that was a long time ago. So,
Is that something we could get a grant for, to have somebody work that up for us?
I doubt there would be a grant available for that, but when the state flood, I'll call it the state flood people, came and did our assessment of the city's flood laws and everything, and we just updated our zoning ordinance as a result of that visit, because they changed all their stuff a couple of years ago. They did say that right now, if we were to apply for the CRS application, we already qualify, because there's certain things you have to do that we're doing already. So Larry's right, it's a matter of getting the system down to what we feel we can provide. And public education is a big part of it, so I think we could do it. Brought this up before a few years ago, we were told by some members of the council that it only affected people in the flood zone, it didn't affect people outside of the flood zone, and because most of us are in the X zone, it's not worth our time.
I'm not sure, I'm not 100% sure that's correct, because even if you're in a flood zone X and you choose to buy flood insurance, which I highly recommend in Florida, I think your flood price would be lower than if you were not.
You would be correct. So without something, it's something we could put on our radar.
I think that's something we need to consider. And you said, so we're already well on the way if we wanted to do it.
Right.
I think that's something we really need to look at.
Okay.
And what Bill brought up begs a question too. One of the questions I had, is that our procedures are going to have to be based on studies, surveys, and data. Okay, so we've got the zone maps. We've got the results of the 2005 flood we had. What else would be available? Other than public input, if there's any public input.
Well, I've got available some tools that I got from the state when they did their visit,
Mhm.
that page 2 and 3, this is where I got that information from. There's a lot of tools available to look at infrastructure in the flood areas, buildings in the flood areas, the effect it would have
Yeah,
out.
okay. Okay, but there is additional things out there that we can draw.
Sure, and the GIS folks from Bay County help them get a lot of stuff for us as well.
Okay. Okay, let's go on. That, my question was basically based on two. You got anything on two? Bill?
No.
Okay, see subparagraph F. Anything there?
I just had,
2.1, I guess, or F1.
yeah, I just had state regulations. This is again, the component must, and then it kind of stops. So I'm not quite sure what we're doing there. Are we just following the state regulations again, or eliminate inappropriate and unsafe development in the coastal areas when opportunities arise? So do our LDRs do that, or does the state do that for us?
So that part F, and then you have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So these things have to be in your comprehensive plan.
Okay.
They have to be addressed in the coastal management element. So I'm gonna do some research to see what other communities have started working towards this process, to see what kinds of things they're doing. But for example, I know in Walton County, they have a lot of protection for their dunes. So you can't even touch a dune over there. You can't move it, you can't excavate it, you can't do anything. So that would fall under the first number 1 at the top, restrict development activities where such activities would damage or destroy coastal resources. That would be an example of what you could adopt or look to adopt to protect coastal resources.
So would that be a list included under that then, as far as the goal and the policy?
Yep, you could have different strategies to, say what you want to do about protection of coastal dunes or even seals or whatever, because those things stabilize the sand and help when a storm comes through, protect the upland areas.
Okay.
Okay, one of my questions is F sub 1, redevelopment principles, strategies, and engineering solutions. Again, where do we get that stuff? And is that going to be a separate component for the redevelopment?
So the engineering solutions is something that we can see if you have any contact with your engineer, whether or not they know of anything that goes on regarding engineering structures for protection against flood risk. But again, I can look and see what other communities are doing, and we can.
Yeah, if you could do that. I mean, there's no sense in
Or like-
reinventing the wheel if somebody's already done it and it's accepted by the state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see, 2, F sub 2, Bill, anything?
Nope, nothing.
Okay, hang on, 2, F6, 3. That's again, techniques and best practices.
it's kind of a given.
Again, that's based on what other people have done, so we don't reinvent the wheel. 4,
Only thing I had on 4 was, what is 44 CFR Part 60?
I believe that is I'll have to check, but I think it might have to do with a FEMA regulation.
okay, if you check that for us then. Okay, 5, I think it's pretty clear. You good with 5?
Yeah, my question was, I think that's all done
Yeah.
with the state stuff.
Okay, and then 6, encourage local governments to, participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, community rating system. We already talked about that.
Yeah,
But even your comments that this is something the state is doing, the state is actually directing you to have it in your coastal management element. So we have to address it somehow.
okay,
Yeah,
that should be pretty easy.
yeah.
Well, that's one reason for the council then, hey, we've got to do it. So if we got to do it, we might as well
Let's do it.
do it, yeah.
Yeah. I just feel like with all the disasters we've had recently, the more we can kind of get ahead of the game. You just got to believe the flood insurance when the storm's going to go up more and more and more
Right.
to pay for some of this. So if we can kind of get out in front on some of this and have it in place, ready to go, it could be a good savings for everybody.
Now, I don't know did they tell
Okay, but I mean, you could give like, okay, in the far eastern zone A, we had X number of claims or whatever. You've got
Right.
that.
It has to be more in general than in detail.
Yeah, okay.
That would help us know where your issues are, what side of
Mhm.
town, what area.
Right.
Yeah, I think with that additional information, we can probably, hopefully address this stuff. Nick, you guys got anything else? Bill, Jack?
No, I was just thinking that, you know, we've got some people that have lived here quite a long time. It would be worth just talking to them and say, I remember, they're gonna remember past or back past '05, just to say, well, historically, this has also been a problem area, just so we can address it
Yeah,
when we're in there. If we don't have it in writing, it'd at least be worth knowing. And I hope some people come forward and help us with that.
I wonder if there's a way to know, because I think the last major hurricane that came through here was Opal. Like that really did some damage other than, you know, some of them. I wonder if there's a way to know how that affected Mexico Beach. It was in '96.
I'm sure there's a way, because I was given a lot of data on a lot of the different disasters we had in the past.
I know they had a major hurricane come through here in the 80s that, I mean, the Apalachicola was like 40 feet over flood stage or something. It was amazing. I wonder if we could get data from that, because I've seen pictures, you know, that people have taken to the river houses and stuff, you know, water was over the roof on some of those things.
The National Archives at the state, or the state archives, have a lot of that information, including the photographs that go with it. And we had, the storms came through here, I know, in 75, 85, 95, 96, whatever. And then 2004 with, I did considerable damage here.
So if we could get some of that info, I don't know whether that's gonna require us to go in and just Google it and see what we can come up with, or it's the best way to do that.
I don't know how public it is. I don't know, Mel, if you would have more ability to retrieve that than I would. I can try.
I can see what I can dig out.
Okay. Okay, Lisa, do you have anything?
When you're talking about the flooding here, is this just, is it hooked to the city's stormwater system? I mean, I'm not quite sure how this is separated, because we have a big flooding problem on the east side of town. It's due to a number of things, including the fact that the stormwater system has not been cleaned out for decades or for years, and the system itself is not working properly. Is that part of this, or is this a separate thing? And there are a lot of scattered flood zones in the east of town. I've got a friend who just discovered a quarter of his house is in the flood zone that throws his whole house into a flood zone, because he enclosed his garage, and only the garage is in the flood zone. I mean, we've got a lot of scattered areas on the east side around me where they are actually in the flood zone. So, you know, there may be more to this than just looking at where the canal and the coastal area is.
No, I think absolutely it has to do with stormwater systems and drainage also, because if your system can't handle the capacity of the rain, then you're gonna have a problem. And that happened in Callaway, back in the late 90s, when we had a huge 24-hour storm event, and people that weren't in a flood zone were flooded because the stormwater systems couldn't handle all the rain. It was coming down so fast, it couldn't handle all the rain, so it backed up and flooded homes that weren't even in the flood zone.
Well, we have a massive problem then on the east side, and my version of massive may be different from Phillips and from Nell's, but from 2012 on, when I've seen a lot of build out on my side, I never had standing water on my property until starting in 2012, and now every time we have a heavy rain, my yard starts closing in with water.
And that happens, and I don't know how your area is, but in old subdivision plats or old platted lots, that were developed prior to any stormwater requirements, that don't have a stormwater pond and don't have any drainage, and then once they start building
Well, then that's something we need to include here in the conservation element, then, is,
Well, you should have, in your subdivision regulations, you should have stormwater system requirements for your
Yeah.
subdivisions, right?
But-
But what might happen is, and I don't know what your subdivision requirements say, but if you have a 20-acre parcel and then you start cutting it off and cutting it off and cutting it off, without applying for a subdivision plat, that's how you can get into trouble with stormwater issues. It depends on your language, I have to look at your LDRs to see how you treat that, but some places won't let you do that for that very reason. But if you're going to subdivide, you have to apply for a subdivision.
yeah, but if we address that here, then the LDR is gonna have to address it.
They will have to address it because you'll get more detailed information on how to do it. You'll just be a broad statement here that says.
Yeah, I'm saying, but if we include that in here, then the LDR has to address
Yes.
it.
Then it definitely needs to be addressed in several
Okay,
places.
okay. Mel, you have anything?
I was going to point out that what you were saying earlier makes perfect sense, because you look at the sea level rise scenario, the red areas kind of follow the canal and our stormwater system. So I think that bears it out right there.
Okay. Laura, anything else?
No?
Okay, so, understand you're still waiting for input from Bay County for the housing
I
element?
did get it Friday, I think it was Friday, and I just haven't had a chance to put it together.
When do you think you can put together a complete draft from the first meeting we had up to the end of the housing element for us to review?
It's not hard to do, if I can find, let me see, what time, are we meeting on the 30th?
Well, we have yet to determine, but I think we are.
So that is, let's see.
I won't be here on the 30th, I'll be in Orlando.
Today's the
Well, we'll have a
16th.
third person.
That's 2 weeks from now. I mean, I can
You'll be here, right?
probably do
Yeah,
it
30th I'll be here.
for your next
But-
meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
that'll work.
So when you were out, I did give them the first sections that we condensed, and it's like a page and a half.
I've got that.
Okay.
I've been able to look at that, so I mean, that looks good to me. Okay. So we don't have anything as far as changes to the comp plan right now. Next comp plan meeting, I think we've decided it's gonna be on the 30th at 12:15, from 12:30?
12:30?
12:30?
So, do we know when Don's back? Mel, any idea?
I do not know.
Assuming he's not an
I'd like to
extended
think he's
cruise.
not going to be on that long.
We'll be real jealous if he's gone 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm out on business travel for the 30th, so I won't be here that day.
For the what now?
The 30th.
30th.
You mentioned the 30th.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm going to guess we won't have Elizabeth. Probably not, seeing as she's selling her condo.
Alex? You be here the 30th?
Sure.
Okay, we're gonna have 3. Okay, any other items we need to cover?
I have nothing else.
Anyone else? Can I have a motion that we adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
In a second?
Second?
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.